let me set up the introduction. So as you guys know, I always like to end my lives with bringing someone else on. Since you guys are being shy, I always like to see who do I know who could be a great guest to kind of help fortify, a Haiti-centric conversation. And I have a great one today. I have a lawyer who actually is from America, right? But she has situated herself in Haiti, helping Haitians on the legal front. I followed her on social media for a long time. She's always sharing really good informational, and I'm sure she's going to leave her social media link at the end of this conversation. Always leaving real good information about different legal processes in Haiti. That's been extremely helpful for me and helpful for the people who she shared too. And she's someone who has worked in Haiti in different legal capacities, from immigration, particularly is her strong suit, but all facets, really. And I'm very excited to have her on. She's someone I think you're going to relate to because she's an American, right? And she can break down those things from American perspective, but understanding what the realities of Haiti are, because she's lived in Haiti for many a year and been engaged on that side, right? And so without further ado, my guest for today is Tammy Rae. Let me bring her onto the stream. Tammy.
Hello, how are you?
What's up, Tammy? It's absolute pleasure to have you on today. I see the sun and everything in the background. YT, you're in Haiti right now.
I am in Haiti. It's a beautiful Saturday morning in Haiti. Yeah, the sun is shining. It's like mid 80s. Life is good.
Right. And by the way, folks on IG, I want to just IG, if you want to, make sure go to SeeJeanty.com. SeeJeanty.com. SeeJeanty, YouTube SeeJeanty, or even Facebook SeeJeanty. You're missing out on a great conversation here. You're only seeing one side of it right now. So please go and watch it so you can be a part of it. You can listen to it, but you won't be able to see it. So Tammy, first question, right off the bat. I already see the comments coming up. Chris, you got a blunt on. What's going? Listen, what qualifies her to speak about Haitian legal issues? Who is she? Break it down, Chris. My eyes, I don't understand it. First off,
right.
I understand. It's a show here. I want everyone to be involved. In Haiti is a place we need all hands on deck to move it, right? And so I've always been about that. So if you're not about that, get off my chat, get out my live. This ain't the energy we need here, right? But in any case, Tammy,
yes.
What's up? Who are you? What are you doing? Like what?
Who am I? So I'm a U.S. attorney. I came to Haiti about 7 years ago. People say, how did you come to Haiti? Well, I came to Haiti like every other white woman. I came to play with kids and save the orphans and, do something wonderful. And then, I learned that Haiti was so much more than that. And people will ask me, why did you choose Haiti? And my response is, you don't choose Haiti. Haiti chooses you. And so I have been here essentially for 7 years. So I am inside a cabinet in Port-au-Prince. I'm with Cabinet Leblanc. And so I've been with them for just over 2 years. And so I'm an American attorney sitting in a Haitian cabinet, and I'm what they call coordinated counsel. So I coordinate the U.S. issues with the Haitian issues. So, of course, I studied U.S. law. I'm licensed in numerous states, many federal jurisdictions, and with the U.S. Supreme Court. And then came to Haiti and have been learning Haitian law, boots on the ground, in the trench, in the middle of the mess, at times facing jail myself because I try to do things too legally. I try to make sure all my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed. And we know sometimes in Haiti that doesn't always bode well. Right. So, I'm learning boots on the ground, but, immigration is one of my specialties. I studied immigration in Rome and Turkey, which is basically where immigration started in biblical times, and have been doing immigration and immigration issues since then. I came to Haiti with a truly international practice. I have clients from all over the globe, business clients, nonprofits, like I said, immigration, family clients, pretty much a little bit of everything. But right now in Haiti, immigration is what everyone is talking about. I would never go so far to say everyone wants to leave Haiti, because I don't think that's the truth. But I do think everyone wants to be able to leave Haiti, whether it's to visit, whether it's to explore, whether it's for business purposes. So, immigration allows us to move from one place to the other. And I think everyone wants the opportunity to see and explore and experience. So immigration right now, especially in Haiti, is where pretty much everything is happening, at least for me.
Nice. So thanks for breaking that down. Cumulatively, your total time engagement in Haiti has been, 2 years with the law firm, but
Right.
just cumulatively, how long have you in Haiti and doing what in general?
Right, over 7 years.
7 years, right? So 7 years in the trenches.
Right.
You've earned your stripes, because the past 4 or 5 years have been particularly tough. That's as long as I've been in the country.
Right.
So you've earned your stripes. You're still there. You're still in Haiti, still pushing, still chugging along. I love it. So with that aside, let's took care of that. Just much like I gotta just open up with Creole to let folks contextually understand what we got going on. We have a different mission here, so thank you. So now, in terms of the legal aspect, I guess when you first got here and you really understood our legal environment in Haiti, like, what is the biggest change? I mean, first and foremost, do you feel Haiti, the laws on the as it is on the books, are they enough? I mean, because I ask that because the more I've read our Constitution and I engage in our different our laws related to our labor code, because I'm in, my first business was staffing, so I had to become very familiar with our labor code. It's a little on the older side, but all the tools are there to be a well-functioning society, right? If we apply them appropriately. But do you feel that? Do you feel, as a lawyer, do you feel all the tools legally are there? And if not, where are we missing some of the things? And what would you recommend?
Okay, so the Constitution is there. It's good in some aspects, not necessarily in others. There are loopholes and there are things that are missing. And then the laws that should be enacted to basically support the Constitution and make sure that it is enacted the way it's written. Again, they're there. There are a lot of very good laws, but there are a lot of loopholes. And the laws are a little bit old, out of date, and not really current with reality. So, for example, as a foreign woman, if I have a child in Haiti, I can do an attestation or a declaration myself as the mother, but the child may or may not be considered Haitian depending on which law we follow. So there are some laws that say yes, it is, and some laws that say no, it's not. And then there's a law that says the child would only be Haitian if it's Black. And it's like, well, that's a human rights issue on every level. So, so the laws are there. If the laws were followed, and the Haitian legal system followed the rule of law closely and tightly, they would be better. But there are so many loopholes, and there are places where the law contradicts itself, and the Constitution says one thing and the law may say something to support, and then 3 clauses down it says something completely contradictory. So those things need to be cleaned up. And I will tell you that I'm actually speaking from experience, because I used to be legislative counsel for the United States. I was legislative counsel for a U.S. senator, and then later legislative counsel in a state. So, or I worked for a U.S. senator and then later legislative counsel for a state. So, legislation was my thing. I know how the laws are made. I know how the laws are written. The rule of law is something that's very near and dear to me prior to coming to Haiti. So when I study the Haitian Constitution and the laws, it could be adequate, but the problem is it's just not. It's not well written and it's not tight. It doesn't put together all the pieces that need to be put together.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. I needed that legal perspective. Now, so immigration is certainly a big specialty of yours. Also, as a coordinator in terms of bridging those two different worlds. But what other segments? I just want to make sure I understand all the segments you consider a specialty for you. Immigration. What else?
So really anything that crosses diaspora or the US and Haitian law. So for example, a lot of diaspora own land in the US and they own land in Haiti. So if that person passes away, or if that person has children, or if that person has a spouse, there are different laws in each country that cover each situation. And the laws are not the same. And you can't apply the laws in Haiti to the United States, and you can't apply the laws in the United States to Haiti. So there are really two parallel processes that have to occur at the same time, especially in the event of marriage, premarital agreements, divorce, estate planning, all of those things that really are kind of overlooked because we're all so busy with life. So that's where I try to come in and really work with people and say, okay, you own land in the United States, you own land in Haiti. So as far as succession planning and your children, how do you want that to be divided? Because it's going to be different. And if you allow the laws of the United States to divide your estate and the laws of Haiti to divide your estate when you pass away, they're going to be very different, and things are going to be divided very differently. So it's better to set up a plan to begin with. Also, like a lot of premarital agreements, like I mentioned, divorces, child custody that crosses the international boundaries. And then, businesses, NGOs. I have a lot of Haitian businesses in the US coming to me for help because a lot of diaspora don't speak and write French anymore. And so I'm negotiating contracts in English. We're drafting them in English. We write them in English, negotiate them in English, and at the end of the contract, put a clause in there that says the contract is still valid in Haiti. It has to be litigated in Haiti, but it was drafted in English, and the English version rules. But then we still have to translate it to French, because if we have to go to court, we have to rely on the French translation. But even the French translation refers to the English translation as being the translation that controls. Because we all know that between English and French, there is a difference. And one thing can mean one thing in English, and it means something completely different in French.
I love it. Thanks for that. And I've trust me, I've worked in an organization where that came into play, where the stakeholders are American, they sign their contracts in America in English for what they understand. But yeah, we had to, the legal version was the French one. And there had to be language in there to reference, hey, this is what the people involved understood is the English version, right. And that's what needs to be ultimately referred. Yeah. So this wasn't a question I planned to ask, but since you brought it up, I think a lot of people may relate to this. So this is a great question. So I hope recently married, 2 years in now, right? And I need to know, and especially now that I closed a deal on some land just last month. Closed the deal. Everything's paid off, and we're in the notary process now. So I'm going to have paperwork. So I don't think it really mattered before, but now that I'm a legit landowner in Haiti, I have bien, as they say. I have a heritage now. If something happens, I need to make sure my kids and my family are able to, get it. So we married in the U.S. So do I need to remarry her in Haiti? Or do I just show her my marriage certificate of America? How does that? I think a lot of folks may be in that boat. How does that work in short?
So there is a way to legalize paperwork both in the United States and in Haiti, so that the other government recognizes it. So your paperwork has to be legalized. So if you got married in the United States, then you have to legalize your paper in the United States. It's called an apostille, and then have it recognized in Haiti. Now, that being said, Haiti's laws are much more open to understand or to look at marriage than the U.S. laws are. So for the U.S., if you're a U.S. citizen, you get married in Haiti, you have to either legalize the handwritten acte de mariage or acte civil, or you have to have an extract, and it has to be registered at the U.S. embassy so that it's recognized by the U.S. government. The U.S. will still recognize your marriage because of full faith and credit. It's a clause in our Constitution in the United States. But for your spouse to get all of the benefits, especially Social Security, were you to pass, if you were married in Haiti, you want to make sure that everything is legalized so that your spouse recognizes the full benefits in the U.S. So on the Haitian side, it's very similar. You have to get an apostille from the United States government, and there's a whole process. You can Google it, and it's different based on your state. Haiti is not part of the Hague Convention for legalizing documents, and it won't make sense to you, but Haiti is part of the Hague Convention, which is a convention that happened with the UN years ago for things like adoption, but not for things like legalization of documents. So there's a whole different process for that. And then those documents have to take certain steps through the Haitian embassy and then into Haiti to be recognized. Okay. And when you purchase land, especially in Haiti, the date of your purchase and the date of your marriage are very important, because in Haiti, even if your spouse is not on your land and not on your title, if you're married when you purchase it, it's considered property of the marriage. It's communal property, as we would say in the United States. In the US, it's completely different. In the US, you can purchase land as an individual, and your spouse is not a part of that purchase, except in some states where they are, and there's other legal qualifications. So yeah, I mean, it gets pretty messy, and that's why people really need to understand that the rules of Haiti don't apply to the US and the rules of the US don't apply to Haiti. And once you become diaspora and you're in one or the other, or you're in both, you need to understand that you have to coordinate all of those laws together.
Okay. And so it sounds like certainly I'm going to have to grab my wedding certificate and then bring it to which department would you, a department?
It usually goes to the Department of State in the U.S. government, but different states have different requirements. So
I'm going the other direction from America to Haiti.
Correct.
So which minister, I guess, would kind of be?
Then it would go to the Department of State in the U.S.
In U.S. first. Okay.
And then it goes to the Haitian consulate in the U.S. and then they bring it over. Then it comes over.
Okay.
Okay, but you have to check the process in your state, because some states require it to go to the State Department of State first, then the Federal Department of State, and then over. And so it's state dependent, plus you have the federal process. Then it goes to the consulate, then it comes to Haiti.
Wouldn't it be easier just to remarry her? just do an act of mariage.
You can do that too. I'll come to the celebration. Let's have a party.
Right. I think hey, baby, if you're watching this, we're going to get remarried in Haiti. Okay, there we go.
Let's do it.
Good stuff. Thanks for answering that, Tammy. Appreciate it. So the other question I have, which is really interesting, I know a lot of folks are asking, immigration. That's a big one. And then after this question, I want to jump into the chat. I see a lot of folks are asking interesting questions. So probably the first thing, I know folks are, especially in the diaspora, a lot of folks are in Haiti and their cousins, their family, their friends, at some point it's going to come up and say, oh, listen, we really want to, go to America, for obvious reasons. Here's a common one. In fact, I have family and quite frankly, especially when at most difficult times in Haiti, pay lock and all these different things, they may not want to leave Haiti, but they want their kids to leave Haiti. They want their kids to be able to go to school. I mean, because especially when you were pay lock, we lost so many days of school. So far, because it was so messed up in Haiti. Is a lot of these folks, they're paying unless they go to lycée, but no one wants to send their kids to lycée, which lycée is public school. Everyone does what they penny pinch to take them to some private school. And guess what? If there's pay lock, if something's happening, in the country that doesn't allow their kids to go to school, guess what? They don't get refunded. They don't get their money back, right? And so on top of that, that frustration and just the fundamental fact is, you're, as a parent, you care about the well-being of your kid, and your kid missing school is not to their well-being. That's when I usually get from friends and family, Chris, what do you know? How can I get my child in America for school? That's what matters. I could live in this is the boat I'm tied to. I'll go down with the ship, but my kids shouldn't suffer. I want to get my kids. How can I do? So if you don't mind, Tammy, what is the best process for someone in that situation that wants their kid to go to America for school? Their 10-year-old or something. Mm-hmm.
So technically on a B visitor visa, a child is not allowed to go to school. And I know that there have been some young people that have come back from the United States recently and had their B visitor visa revoked because it was determined they were attending public school. Now, public schools in the U.S., because of the U.S. system, will allow any child with a birth certificate to attend public school. So that's the catch-22 that Haitian parents need to be aware of and be cautious of. The best way for a child to go to the United States and study is on a student visa, which is generally an F1 student visa. Right now, they're extremely difficult to get. In order to qualify for a student visa, the student has to be going to the United States to a private school. Tuition for that private school has to be fully paid by a person in the United States that meets the income qualifications and can say, basically, we can afford to put this child in private school. We can pay for all of their living and all of their other daily needs, as well as any transportation back and forth. If the child is an orphan, because orphans don't have ties to Haiti, they do not qualify for a student visa. So we have a lot of people that try to bring orphans to the United States for study. They will never qualify because they don't have ties. There's no reason for an orphan to return to Haiti. The US government knows that they will stay. And the whole purpose of a student visa, the F1, is so that the child goes to the United States, studies, and then comes back to Haiti to make the country a better place. I mean, we want, so that's the purpose. So it has to be able, the applicant has to be able to show that the student is going to go to the United States, study, and return. So when the applicant goes to make the application, when the student goes to make the application and their sponsor makes the application, we need to focus on 1 year at a time. We can't focus on a 6-year-old and say, oh, well, I'm going to pay for the 6-year-old to go through elementary, middle school, high school, college, and medical school. Because, right, we don't even know this student is going to make it through middle school. So really the focus is 1 year at a time. And then each year there has to be a proof that that year can be paid for. It has to be in a private school, cannot be public, no public funds used. The child will have to have medical insurance when they get to the United States. All their costs have to be covered. And then once all of those components are basically met, then the child goes to the embassy for an interview. And this is the hard part because normally the child is going to go to the embassy for the interview with their parent. And it's the parent usually, especially if the child is under 13, that speaks for the child. So the parent has to know all of the ins and outs of the study and why the child is going to the United States, but also convince the consular officer that the child is coming back, that they're not immigrating the child permanently as an immigrant, that this child is going as a non-immigrant and going to come back. And lately I've been doing 2 and 3 interviews per child before we really even get, I would say, decent consideration that the child really does not intend to immigrate. And then, the officers are going to look at who is supporting the child, who is sponsoring the child. Is it an organization? Is it a single person? Is that single person a family member that could apply for the child to come to the U.S. on an immigrant visa? If they are, then they're going to face more scrutiny because really the United States wants everyone to follow the processes to immigrate legally. So a question that you were kind of alluding to before, but we haven't got there yet is, if you have family that want to go to the United States, whether it's your spouse, whether it's a fiance, whether it's a brother or sister or mom or dad, start the process now. Because I have right now in my client base, I have people that started the process in 2002.
Wow, 20 years ago.
20 years ago, 20 years to bring a brother from the United States or from Haiti, to the United States. So I have people that started in 2011, 2012, 2014 to bring family members. The family member process is extremely long. Right now, the spousal visa process is 4 years. 4 years. I've had
most marriages don't even last 4 years, much less.
So, and imagine if one spouse is in the United States and the other is in Haiti, that makes life even more complicated for the marriage. So when they get together in the United States, they have a lot of hurdles to overcome. So yeah, right now from application to interview, and it is running at 4 years for spouses.
And that's one of the questions I'm glad you jumped on was just that, which the next big immigration question is, how do I get people I care about over?
Right.
And so you alluded, there are processes in place. I know family is a big official lane, right?
Right.
But so let's talk about that family. So, you have to go through a whole process, Tammy. I know it can be very convoluted, and heck,
Right.
that's why they got to pay you, right? But just give it very for dummies level. Let's say I do have a brother, or I mean, do cousins even, like, how far of a cousin? No, cousins, no. Okay.
No, immediate family only. So of course we can start with the fiancés, right? A fiancé is actually a non-immigrant visa that then switches to an immigrant visa. Fiancés right now are running 12 to 18 months from application to interview, and sometimes more, because if the person needs a sponsor or additional, financial help in the back on the U.S. side, sometimes more. So spousal visas. So spouses, of course, always qualify. Parents, children, brothers, and sisters. And children that are over 21 fall into a different category than children that are under 21. And so children over 21 take longer. The other thing that I would say is, if someone is petitioning for a brother or sister, because we're seeing that it's taking, 10, 15, 20 years to get that visa, when you petition for your brother or sister, if they have a spouse and children, you can petition for them at the same time. And hands down, do it. And the same thing with spousal visas. If you're petitioning for your spouse and they have a child, make sure you have a DNA test to prove it's their child. But after that, petition for the child at the same time, because spousal visas are running at 4 years. And then if you have to spend another 2 or 3 years getting the child to the United States, that becomes a mess, because then the child spends 2 or 3 years without one of their parents.
Question. I'm aware in the past, there's been instances where, like, I know in the 90s, or 93-ish or so is one example. I think it happened again, maybe the late 90s, where the U.S. government does. I'm very ignorant of this. I just know loosely, that something happens where the U.S. government says, okay, well, everyone who's been here, illegally, from such date, here's a quicker path to become a citizen. Show us some basic information, who you are. I guess you make an affidavit or something to attest that you've been in the country for so long, and then you become citizen. And I'll be honest, as I talk, I mean, this is very hush hush, by the way, Tammy. This is the Haitians are very reluctant to let how they really got here, right? But if you hang out with them long enough, eventually it comes out, right? And as I've gotten, and listen, I'm in my 30s now, and it's taken this long from the people I've grown up with my whole life to hear the real stories of how they've become legal,
Right.
in the countries they are from the U.S., even France. There's a different process, but they all have the same familiar thing where they were here already. Something happened from a U.S. government immigration policy was announced, and then they were able to use this sort of affidavit process to attest that they were here and now they're legal.
Right.
Help me understand that lucid thing there. Okay.
Well, so I mean, yeah. So it happened. It's in the past. And the one thing that I would say is, don't count on it to ever happen again. Because immigration policies and the position and perspective on immigration in the United States has changed so much that I would not expect for it ever to happen again. There used to be the position that the United States, was open for business. The United States was, accepting immigrants and things like that if you followed certain processes. And right now, there really seems to be the perception that the door, who's in is in and who's out is out, and the gates are closed. And so, yes, there were processes, there were different opportunities, different pieces of legislation that passed that allowed people to get their residency and a path to citizenship. Now, we know that Biden has asked Congress to create a path to citizenship specifically for DACA and for others. Maybe there will be a path to citizenship for those who already have TPS. But given the composition of the legislature and given the political climate right now and the feel around immigration, I would say don't ever count on that. And the other thing that should be remembered is that in the United States, when legislation is enacted, very rarely is it enacted retroactively. It doesn't reach back. It's from today forward, right? And TPS is a perfect example, the one that just closed on June 30th. If you were here on June 30th or before, you can file for TPS, right? It's not retroactive. It is, as of today, this is what happens. And that's most legislation in the United States. It's not enacted retroactively. So that's why I tell people, if you are planning to make a petition for immigration, if you are planning to do something legally, remember that once it's enacted, it's as of that date, period. And it's a hard and fast date. So if you're going to do something, then take action.
Okay.
Right. So that way you're included. You're in the club. You're in the group. Right. Yeah.
So those are the two big immigration questions I had. So thank you for answering them. It's, I'll be honest. I've said this before on the channel, and I'll say it again. Because I'm unashamed. I given the situation I'm in, and ultimately how I've decided to use this privilege, and so what I've said in the past is, my parents, my mom, my dad, love them to death. They could have done nothing else for me, whereas my whole life, right? They could have just left me, abandoned me, But the fact they did one thing, they came over here and they made me a U.S. citizen. And maybe when you're a kid, you don't appreciate this. They tell me to do my homework and take a bath. I hate you. Such a burden. But I tell you, what I've been able to do with my U.S. citizenship, because I'm a passionate Haitian, and anyone who's following me long enough knows I'm doing everything I can to bring jobs back, bring a different eye back, bring investment back, get our products out, But I'm able to do it from the standpoint of an American, right? Because I was looking around for my U.S. passport, because I have a U.S. passport. The things I'm able to do, it's really exclusive because of that U.S. passport. And though I am a dual citizen, I did go and get all my paperwork, and and listen, I was born in Haiti too. It makes the dual citizen process a lot easier. Let me tell you, I have a Haitian passport, so I have everything. But my parents could have done nothing else, but because they privileged me with being a U.S. citizen, and so that's why when I'm in Haiti, and quite frankly, almost everyone wants to leave. Like Haitian native, they don't want to leave. And I don't ever argue with them. I don't try to convince them to stay. The reason is, the difficulties of Haiti as it stands right now. But what I always tell them is, leave, but come back. Try to come back. You go get established, become wildly successful, right? But try to come back, right? To see what you can do, because it's that coming back that potentially has a chance to invest in, and to get Haiti changed. So, but that's why what you're doing is important, because at the end of the day, until we do have a government that has put people first, and what the people need first, we're in a situation where we're ultimately, listen, it breaks my heart. I just read an article the other day. The Cuban government intersected 295 Haitian migrants in a boat, right? And that breaks my heart. If I was a leader, a role, prime minister role, I would take that personal. If I have my citizens so dissatisfied with the way the country's been run, they're willing to risk their lives on a rickety-dickety boat, to cross the massive ocean to leave. I would take that personal, right? I remember, and I'll jump in the comments real quick, when what's his name, Moise Jean Charles got ruffled up by the U.S. immigration. I know you follow that story real closely, right? I'm probably going to ask you about that. Give me 1 second. Let me make my point. I'll ask you about that.
No politics. No politics.
No, it's not just a procedural process in terms of CBP, the Customs Border Patrol, and so we got ruffled up, and then they treat him the way they did. They stripped away his visa. Apparently, came back, and he's at the airport making his proclamations. How dare they? They're asking me this, and the outrage of how his treatment was. Where were you when the Haitians at Texas were being mishandled? I didn't see any Haitian politician make a press conference of the tens of thousands of Haitians on the border and how they were being mistreated. I ain't seen one Haitian politician, not one, make a statement, make a press conference decrying that. But when you get personally mishandled, now it's outcry. Now it's the patriotism. Now it's the Haitian, we Haitians need to be treated with respect. Oh, so that's how it works. Oh, when you're personally affected. I see. But then Tammy, let me ask, procedurally there, no politics, but procedurally there, what happened to Moise Jean Charles, does that make sense to you? Is that just per the process of immigration?
So no politics, but in law, I always say that there are three realities: my reality, your reality, and then the truth. Right? So, I mean, there is a very distinct procedure set forth for Customs and Border Patrol. And, you know, I would believe that they most likely followed it. If they went outside of that procedure, possibly they did. That wouldn't be unheard of. Things like that happen. But, you know, CBP is never going to issue a statement saying this is what happened. Right. And so he who cries loudest wins the race. Right. So, I mean, and it's not politics. I'm just speaking in general, you know, and I encounter this in marriages and divorces and everything else. You know, there's one person's side, there's the other person's side, and reality is somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. And so, we'll never know what really happened. But I do completely agree with you that it was interesting that there wasn't an outcry, or more of an outcry. You know, or there isn't an outcry when they find boats on the shore in Florida that have completely been pummeled by, you know, the elements. And there wasn't a huge outcry. I mean, there was, but there wasn't. There wasn't a lot of statements. There wasn't a public outcry, a public political outcry from Haiti.
You know, what's worse, actually, the Haitian government has, for a long time, had the opposite policy. I remember René Préval, I know you know this statement, René Préval, nage pour sauter, right? His personal, if you don't like his policy and how he's doing things, swim to get out. So actually, unfortunately, the policy of Haitian governments have typically been, hey, immigrate, get out of here. We don't need you. You know, that's a sad thing, you know. So I know time's a ticking, so I want to grab maybe 1-2 questions in here that make sense from the chat and see, well, this is a generic, easy, low-hitting question we can just bring up. Can they put amendments in the Haitian Constitution?
Of course.
Easy question. Yeah, they can. They do all the time. Most recent was in 2011. Yeah,
right.
So 2012.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that the hardest thing about the Haitian Constitution is to remember is that it was written in one language and then translated into another. And so the two don't match because, as we spoke, even English and French don't always match. So French and Creole aren't going to match either. So, you know, when you're writing an amendment, you know, really the Constitution needs to be clear in what language rules, what language controls. And then if you're going to write amendments, you have to write amendments in that language, right? Yep. So we can't write Creole amendments in Creole to a French constitution. There's just a lot of complexities to the Constitution, but of course any constitution can be amended following the constitutional process. You know, I'm not going to write an amendment today and submit it to whomever because we don't have a president, we don't have a functioning legislature. So, you know, there has to be a process that's followed. Right.
No, good point. Next question I see here. I don't know. This is an interesting one. The process of changing your name in Haiti by Rob Roy. What's the process of changing your name? In Haiti.
Yeah, good luck with that one. Because you can change your name in Haiti. It's much easier to change your name in the US, but you can change your name in Haiti and there is a legal process to go through. I mean, he can contact me and we can get the steps to go through to change your name, but it's not easy. Now, remember, when women get married, they often take their husband's name. And I have a lot of problems with that legally as I'm creating documents because the Haitian state fails to recognize the changed name upon marriage. And that's one of the most basic times when a person's going to change their name, especially as a woman when you get married. Now, I mean, a lot of people who know me know my name is not just Tammy Rae. That is the name that I go by, but I do have actually multiple last names by law from the United States. And when I'm in Haiti, I am only recognized by one name. They don't recognize my hyphenated name. They don't recognize my extended name because of marriage. So it's, there are ways you can change your name, but there's going to be a why are you changing your name? As you go through the process, are you trying to evade, paying bills? Are you trying to evade the law? And then once you change your name in Haiti, there's going to be the question of, are you still going to be recognized as the same person? It's not as easy here as it is in the US.
Yeah, no, that's one of the reasons why, even my wife, I discouraged her from changing her name just because of, I know Haiti.
Right.
And because she already has all her paperwork,
Right.
all her documentation in her current name. And the moment I was ready, I was ready to like, all right, let's get your name changed, babe, but then it hit like that question. Oh, what about her Haitian documentation? Oh crap! I was like, no, let's leave it because I know Haiti too well. Just to get the paperwork the way it was a pain. Now this, so great point. So in other words, it's hard.
It's doable, but it creates problems on the backside.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Well, this is listen. This question here about buying land. I've made videos on this. I've had a 2-part series, in fact, with another lawyer, Giovanna Menard, on that. By the way, if you guys want to go watch that, where we got very much in depth on this topic. Probably the short answer I give is you do it very carefully and very slowly. But Tammy, go ahead. How do you want to?
So I would say make sure that you have trusted individuals, especially trusted attorneys and notaries, to walk you through the process. As a Haitian American, and I'm sure, Chris, you can probably attest to this, there are certain documents that you need as a Haitian American. If you're American born and you don't have the Haitian passport and the Haitian citizenship, then you have to go through that process first and be recognized as a Haitian. Otherwise, you're buying land as a foreigner, which is a completely different process. And so you have to walk through those steps. And then when you're choosing land, there's a million steps. I feel like a million steps you walk through, and you have to make sure that you're stepping in the right place and you don't step on a landmine, because purchasing land in Haiti is not purchasing land in the United States. The title process is not even comparable, and you want to make sure that you're actually purchasing land with a clean title and not purchasing land where, the child of a former owner is going to come after you in 20 years after you've built your dream house and say, now I want you to pay me. Yep. Especially when you're diaspora, because we all know that diaspora, you're rich.
Yeah, doesn't matter. You're automatically a Mercedes-Benz driving bourgeois who deserves to give me some money. That's it.
We're living the American Housewives of Beverly Hills life.
Right. Folks don't know the struggle. They don't know the struggle. Yeah. Believe us. So another question. This is not a legal one, but this is an interesting question. Personal question, I think. What's the biggest challenge you face on Haiti? What keeps you motivated?
So really the biggest challenge I face being in Haiti is that I am white, because there is the perception that I have money. And no matter how legally or correctly I try to do things, because I really try to do everything very legally, I always have people on the backside asking me for a ticado. A little gift. Ticado, madam, ticado. Or they'll want to help me, but they'll want something in return. And, studying law in the United States and being licensed in the various jurisdictions, I have to be very cautious, because nothing that I do in Haiti is worth risking my law license in the United States. But what keeps me motivated? The successes, the little successes. So 2 weeks ago, I was able to get a medical visa that had been in process for months for a young man that has cancer, and his only option for survival is to go to the United States for treatment. And, pushing the embassy and congressional support and things like that, just trying to get this young man to Florida for cancer treatment, to give him the opportunity to live. And the day we finally got the yes, and we got the passports with the visa stamped, I mean, I was dancing and singing and worshiping, and it was a good day. So those little successes are absolutely amazing. The spousal visa that we've worked for 4 years on, And finally the husband is going to be able to go to the US and see his child that he has never seen because it was born in the US, and the wife doesn't feel safe coming to Haiti to bring the child. He's only seen his child by video chat. Like those are the days when I see them and they're, together in the US and I see their welcome home party and the pictures. Those are the days that keep me here, that keep me going.
Awesome. And that could probably be the last question, because I've seen different iterations of this question as it relates to really dual citizenship, right? There's a few questions about dual citizenship, birthright. So I don't know, break that down to as much as you know about that dual citizenship. What does it mean, and in the process in general? For again, someone of the Haitian diaspora who most likely wasn't born in Haiti, was born of Haitian parents. What do you know that process and how someone can reclaim that dual citizenship?
Right. So, dual citizenship is recognized by both countries, although neither country comes out and says we recognize dual citizenship, right? Dual citizenship is pretty much internationally recognized. And if you are Haitian but born in the United States, you are American by birthright. It is your right to be an American citizen because Americans recognize birth of the blood and birth of the soil. So you can either be born of an American citizen. So my child born in Haiti would still be an American citizen because they're born of the blood, or you can be born on US soil and you become, birth of the soil. So American citizenship is conveyed in those two ways. Haitian citizenship is traditionally conveyed of the blood. You have to have Haitian lineage. Now, that, like I mentioned earlier, there are loopholes in the law that somewhat allow for birth of the soil. It's very controversial and people will tell you it's not allowed, but there are loopholes in the law that you can get through. So for dual citizens, for people that are Haitians that are born in the United States, you're a U.S. citizen by birth on the soil. You get a U.S. passport, you'll have your U.S. birth certificate, and then you have to come to Haiti, and there's a whole legal process to follow where your parents have to attest that they were born in Haiti. You have to have their birth certificates and an attestation from them saying that they were born in Haiti. And then there's a court process that you go through to essentially have another birth certificate created in Haiti saying that you were born in the US, but you are of Haitian descent. And then you can go ahead and get your passport and your national ID card. So there's a whole legal process. It's not fast, but it's doable. And you just have to walk through it. You pretty much have to have an attorney, though. Don't have a fixer do it, because if you have a fixer or someone that's not an attorney do it and you don't go through the correct process, and then it's discovered that you have created papers to have dual citizenship, then you're going to have issues.
Would you be someone who could help with that?
Our cabinet does it frequently, because I represent one of the sports associations, and so we do it for a lot of the athletes. So that they can be recognized as both Haitians and Americans. So,
unfortunately, there's been a lot of unfair pushback on that. I know the basketball team, for example, was very unfairly disqualified. It was so frustrating,
It was. So,
that's a whole different
episode. So I'm the advocate for the Federation of Haitian Basketball. So yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was talking about. It's difficult. But as long as we walk through the paperwork properly and no one creates paperwork and we actually do it the legal way, then there is definitely a process for that. And then, they can carry dual passports.
Okay, there we go. My thing got funny there. Okay, all right, good. All right. So, so that's as much as I want to take from the chat. Very enlightening conversation, and I'm going to make sure your information is left in the comments of this video and also on screen in just a moment. Really, the last question I want to talk about is really, Tammy, what do you want to talk about? Is there anything you want to go sort of bring up? Anything you got going on that you want to promote? This is your space now to kind of just do you, be you, talk about whatever you want.
No, I love Haiti. This is a great place to work. And I kind of want to echo something that you said earlier. The one thing that I find the most difficult is diaspora who want to send money but don't want to come back. Sending money is not going to fix the problem. We need you here because you have a different perspective. You have been outside the box. You have a different perspective. You have a different base, you have a different knowledge and background, and Haiti needs the diaspora to not just send money, but come back. We need you here. Haiti is not that scary. It is not that unsafe. Is it unsafe? Yes. Can it be scary? Yes. But you are Haitian. Come back to your country, boots on the ground, and start fixing your country.
Round of applause. I know you guys are clapping where you guys are at. So good stuff, Tammy. Thank you so much. Tammy, please drop how can they contact your law firm? You know, what's the best way? Is it a WhatsApp? Can you type it in the chat so I can post it on screen? Can you?
So I can type it in the chat. I'll also say it. So you can find me on Facebook. I'm Tammy Rae. Just drop me a message. I'm not going to friend everyone that drops me a message. That's just too much for me. You can find me on IG. I'm Haiti Legal Gal on IG. And I'm with Cabinet Leblanc. So, I mean, we do have a general phone for the cabinet, but it's easier to hit me on IG or Facebook Messenger. And then, I never give my personal phone number on social. That's just a hot mess. But if you hit me on IG, then I can communicate with you and figure out kind of how I can help you. So Haiti Legal Gal or Tammy Rae on Facebook.
All right, I'll put that on screen real quick. Sure. Tammy Rae on Facebook. Just search for her, or IG Haiti Legal Gal. I spelled it right?
I think it's Haiti_legal_gal, but
okay. It'll
all get there. They'll find me.
All right, let me fix that real quick. Tammy Rae and IG Haiti. That's important. __gal. All right. Okay.
Perfect.
I like that. Okay. And so go give her a follow. She's a stalwart in terms of information. And in fact, when I first presented her, I saw a few folks. Oh, I know Tammy. Tammy's great. So you already got some followers already out there, Tammy. Who also follow me, which is great. And I appreciated your candor, your openness, your honesty. And the fact that you're an ally, you're on the ground fighting, and what folks don't even understand is like Dessalines was cool. Polish, the Polish is a great example. Polish, he made them honorary citizens. Never had an issue with different races. He had issue with the French. The French he disliked, but anyone else didn't care about you. So if you were an ally fighting against oppression, right, fighting for the good cause, you are a friend and ally. And we need to take a page from Dessalines. We need to use all hands on deck to get, Haiti moving forward. And Tammy, thank you so much for the effort you're putting. You're on the ground. You're as Haitian as you're Haitian. You're on the ground fighting for us. You're Haitian. That's my definition. Point blank, make me president. That's how I'm handling the immigration policy. Are you fighting for us? You're
Perfect.
That's the new. There's blood, soil, and are you with the fight? That's the third way, right?
I'm here. I'm in.
Right.
In the middle of the fight some days. Yes.
Good stuff. All right, Tammy. Thank you so much. Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Ciao.